All right, welcome to technical session number 32. Technically speaking, this is actually putting us firmly in 1002 territory. So anything you see above session T32 is typically 1002 material. Anything prior to T32 is 1001. So in this particular one, we're going to be, I'm going to yank out my headset so I can't hear anything. Slowly try to buy time until I hook it back up and I'm good to go again. All right, now we're going to go over Windows 8, 8.1, 7, and 10. Those are the four main versions of Windows that are covered by the 1002. Anything prior to that, they don't really speak of, with exception to Vista, but that is specifically with regards to the upgrade path you would need to take to move from Vista to any other version. So these four, I know Windows 11 is going to be coming out. Again, this is real life versus the exam. The exam is 4 to 5 years old. Windows 11 was not quite a thing yet. In fact, back then they were even talking about Windows 10 being just a permanent version, and they were just going to send out like yearly updates, essentially. But they have moved from that path. Now they're going to be putting out Windows 11, but that will probably be the next iteration of CompTIA. All right, our objectives for this particular technical session is going to be to describe the purpose and function of an operating system overall, identify the main features of the Microsoft operating systems so that we can be aware of them and know when certain things were implemented. And typically when we look at it, we know what versions we're looking at for the most part. All right, compare and contrast the features between 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. All right. Behavioral skills and mindsets we want to take into account while going through this technical session are adaptability. We need to be able to adapt and change to the various types of operating systems we may be working with in our working environment, depending on how they are established. You may come across Linux, you know, especially if you're dealing with servers and things like that. You may come across Mac OS. You may also come across Windows more frequently. But depending on the environment you're in, you may have all three operating in that very environment. You need to be able to adjust and adapt to each of those. Maintain a future orientation. Know that the actions we take today will inevitably affect our future and how things turn out. Success comes not from what you do occasionally, but what you do consistently. We do repeat that quite a lot. All right. First off, let's talk about what exactly is an operating system in general. Well, it essentially is the thing that allows your computer to talk to all the fun hardware that is attached to it and make it more functional for the user and allow the user to also interact with the files that they have. It also provides an application or provides an environment where you can add applications on top of that so that you can gain greater functionality from your systems or entertainment, depending on how you view it and what applications you're using. These applications and or operating systems can run through one of two types. You have the GUI interface, which is the graphical user interface. For those of you who are very familiar with Windows, that is the typical interface you are operating in, as well as like your iOS, on your phones or your, or mostly Linux and Mac OS. They're all operating in a GUI system. It just means that, like you have all the pictures and icons that you can click on and maneuver your way through file systems in that manner. The counter to that is CLI, or command line interface. For those who are familiar with DOS and terminal and other things like that, it is where you typically have like a black screen and then you have to type in the commands manually to maneuver through file systems to get everything done. It is strictly a command-based structure. So those are the two main types you will see as far as the interfaces you will work with. And we will work with command line interface quite a bit moving towards the end of this in Windows as well as in Linux. So you will have familiarity with both of those command lines prior to graduating this course. All right, now components of the operating system. You have the OS itself, and you have the kernel, and you have the shell. Those are the three main pieces. kernel is like the core center of the operating system. It is predominantly tasked with how the user is going to interact with that hardware and how it's going to utilize that hardware. You cannot get from your interface to the actual hardware devices without actually going through the kernel itself. The shell works off of commands and procedures that the programs use so that they can do what is needed for the operator itself. This is done through different interfaces or interface tools such as a control panel or Windows Explorer. If you've ever gone searching through files and stuff like that, you're utilizing the shell to a degree. In Windows Explorer, it's icon driven, is a GUI interface, graphical user interface. And if you're going to go through command line or DOS, that is a command line interface. All right. Now, if you want to think of it in terms of, like kind of a visual, the operating system operates as if it is a restaurant. You are a patron at that restaurant. The kernel itself is, or excuse me, the shell is like the wait staff where they're kind of bringing you all the stuff that you need to be able to operate. And the kernel is kind of like the cook that's preparing everything so that it is functional. This is kind of the underlying components of the operating system itself. They don't dive too heavily into these. It's just having a basic understanding of them. It's more definitional with regards to the kernel and the shell. Questions so far? All right. Next. Operating system categories. You have 4 basically really broad operating system categories to use. And the first one is a server. The server's main purpose is to serve the other users. They are going to be providing up resources and information, stuff like that. So it allows for the sharing of information applications by a workstation that is dedicated to this system. It has optimized itself for background processes that the users themselves may not be fully aware of that are happening. Now you have the workstation, which is the one we are the most familiar. This is the end user. So this would be like your Windows or what have you, where you're able to access the info and applications and all that fun stuff that you already have stored on your system. And it operates independently, does not require outside information to be able to operate. And it is essentially set up to be as efficient as possible for foreground processes or applications that you're utilizing in the moment. Mobile operating systems are kind of a stripped down version of normal operating systems so that they can operate on a lower power unit. They are generally optimized for touchscreen manipulation. Very few can actually use CLI commands. I mean, they do have Linux phones out there, but they're becoming more and more touch-based systems. Then you have cloud-based, which is kind of a newer thing, but it is becoming pretty heavily adopted because of cost of entry is pretty low. The units themselves that you would use for these types of things are pretty expensive, like your Chromebooks and netpads and stuff like that. Yes, Humberto.
Yes, when you say that the mobile is optimized for one program, it means that it can multitask in the mobile operating system?
No. It's optimized for touch-based interface. So using the touch screen to interact with, you can have multiple things running at any given time. Anybody who has not checked what apps they have running on their system knows this very well, because at the end of the day, you may look and you have like 50 different apps open and running in the background, and it's just slowing your phone down. So they can multitask. But it's just the operating systems themselves are not going to be as robust as, say, like Windows 10 on your desktop. They're not going to be, it's not going to have all that functionality. It's going to be a lot more narrowly focused, and it's going to be pretty much surrounding a touch-based interface, not a whole lot of keyboard entry. because though there are some really fast textures out there, it's still not as efficient, you know, inputting on a keyboard as you can with just touch base or operating off of a standard keyboard. So cloud-based operating systems, you do not fully have an operating system on your system or on your unit, like a Chromebook or something like that. You're literally connecting to the internet and you're operating off of a remote server. That's where you get your full functionality. The actual capabilities of the unit itself are going to be very, very limited, as well as the storage attached to that device is also going to be very limited. But again, cost for entry is really low, and ease of use also is pretty good as well. Questions so far? All right. Main functions we need to be aware of when dealing with our operating systems. It needs to be able to provide a user interface. We need to have a way to be able to interact with all the different hardware we have attached to our system, be it microphones, cameras, keyboards, mouse, even your monitors. All this stuff is communicated through the operating system so that we will have greater functionality with it. Manage your files. It enables you to add, remove, edit, and delete if so choose. Manage your applications, being able to run applications specifically and shut them down if they are not performing properly or when you're done using them. And then manage hardware, communicates with the hardware attached to the computer itself. Questions so far? So the four main functions: provide a user interface, a way for you to interact with it, manage your files on your system, control of information, managing the applications, be it for entertainment or productivity or what have you, and then also managing any hardware that is attached to that device, printers, what have you. All right, now, pie chart says a lot. Microsoft Windows dominates the market. They're about 95% of the whole market. I mean, it gets down into some smaller slices when you start talking about versions of Windows itself. But yeah, it's about 90% roughly for Windows. Then you get into, or 85%, something along those lines. Then you start getting into Linux, or excuse me, OS X, which is the Apple operating system. And I think you get near 10% on that. And then Linux, you get down into the 2%, maybe less. And then other is like 0.5%. So overwhelmingly speaking, Microsoft controls the marketplace. All right. Versions that we need to pay attention to for the most part. XP will be brought up from time to time because that was one of their most stable systems that they had created. It was widely adopted and loved in the enterprise market. It didn't have a whole lot of fancy bells and whistles, but it didn't crash and it did what it did very well. So a lot of businesses were very reluctant to upgrade, and it actually took Microsoft saying, look, we're not going to support it anymore before anybody would actually, the majority of people would actually move off of it. Vast majority of ATMs, kiosks, almost anything you can think of was running off of XP up until about, I would say about 8 or 9 years ago. So not very long ago, did they finally get people off of XP, and that came out in what, 2001? So say 2015 was probably when they finally got everybody off because they refused to support any more security upgrades for it. Windows Vista was the next one that businesses kind of latched onto pretty heavily. My company that I worked with, we were on Vista up until we left. And then we move into the ones that will be on the exam themselves: 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. Those are the main focal points. But as far as with regards to XP and Vista, you may need to know upgrade paths to upgrade machines. All right. Now, overall features of operating systems that we want to keep in mind. These are the features that we tend to have in common with all of the ones we will be discussing. They may be slightly different in variation as well as paths to get to these things, but these are pretty much the same. We have the desktop look tends to be pretty similar with the exception of Windows 8, which was a very drastic left turn that was not widely adopted. And then you have File Explorer itself, not to be confused with Internet Explorer, which was their internet browsing mechanism for quite some time. Various support tools. You have 32 and 64-bit versions. We will get into more detail with regards to those, probably in the next technical session. Security tools, like a Windows firewall, things like that. Event viewer, where all of your logs are kept. And Ready Boost, which is an interesting little workaround that will buy you time. Questions so far? All right, Windows desktop. If you are on a Windows machine and you look to the bottom left of your screen, you will see your start screen or start menu. This is one of the main interfaces that you would go through to find the applications that you need to operate. Along the bottom of your screen, you might see on the taskbar there various applications that you have open or available, but there's something you can do there. You can actually pin applications to there, the ones that you use the most, in order to interface with them much faster. We will also get into gadgets, into what those are, as well as Arrow and what that update has to be or brings to the party. And then we have charms, which is something else that was brought in. I think Windows 8.1 brings in charms, if I'm not mistaken. Taskbar and notification area. And then personalization. All right, first, Windows 7 desktop. Yes, you do need to have a good lay of the land. We just talked about this here, was your start button. Down along the bottom has your open applications that you're currently using in this area that is called the taskbar. Now off to the left, you have a section there, which if you have applications that you're opening up every single day and you're using them very readily, you can pin those applications to the taskbar so that you can click and open them really quickly rather than having to go search them through your menus every time. So it just makes it for a lot quicker access. The application that you are currently running will always be in the foreground, the one you're interacting with at that time. Down in the bottom right-hand side of your system over here is your notification area or systems tray. Those two terms are interchangeable. So notification area or systems tray. This will be where you will see your wireless access, if you're having any security alerts, your network status, and time and date, things like that will always be down in that notification area on the bottom right or system tray. Now with Windows 7, they did this fancy new thing. I'm not sure why this is a major key, but the top part of the window itself, if you see up here, this used to be a solid color bar, but they did some wonderful computing magic and made it transparent so you could actually see through it. And that is considered to be one of the major upgrades for Windows 7. It is called Arrow. So Arrow on your Windows is this transparent bar or border around the windows in which you are operating, allowing you to see what is behind it a little easier.
Just like a Mac user to not appreciate the wonderful addition of Arrow.
Hey, I call it like I see it. All right. So The big upgrade for Windows 7 was Arrow, just so you're aware of it. Next, Windows 8 and 8.1. One was a tragic failure and the other one was an apology. So Windows 8 was when they basically tried to make the operating systems that were on the phones the same as the operating system that was running on the computer. So they didn't soup up the phones, they stripped down what was on the computer. So it was not a very wonderful interface. A lot of people did not appreciate it. They removed the start button from the Windows, so it made navigation a little bit clunkier for people who have basically been using the older versions of Windows for the majority of their life. But the look that they were talking about with all these tiles was called Metro UI. And it was basically designed to operate and look like it was a mobile device. So Metro UI was introduced with Windows 8. Windows 8.1 went back to looking very similar to Windows 7. They did keep some of the Metro UI with the tiles and stuff like that, but that was hidden more in the start menu. When you open up the menu, you would see the tiles within there, and you still see them there a bit to this day. But that was the introduction of Metro UI. Questions with regards to Windows 8 and 8.1?
You said Metro UI was brought in for 8.1?
No, 8.
8, okay.
It was initiated in 8, and that is this mobile device look right here with all the tiles and all that fun stuff. That was Metro UI. And for 8, they had removed the start button, and that's how the interface operated. With Windows 8.1, they brought the start menu back. It looked very similar to the older Windows, and the Metro UI itself was operating within the start menu rather than in the foreground, interfacing. Yeah, 7.
So there wasn't really like a big upgrade and a big difference between 8 and 8.1.
Most of the difference between 8 and 8.1 was the skins, like how it looked.
So pretty much the aesthetic of the
Because people were so mad with 8 and were refusing to use it. Like, people were wanting to downgrade back to 7 after like short periods of time working with 8. And it also didn't function very well in an enterprise environment, which is Windows bread and butter. It's almost every medium to large size business, every machine in their company operates off Windows. And as such, because that's the case, when they go home, they would rather operate in something that they're familiar with, so they operate on Windows at home too. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 for Windows. So. All right. Questions? All right. Next, Windows 10 desktop. You can see right here, even within the start menu, you still see that Metro UI working in there with the tiling systems. This was a much more robust system, kind of bringing us up to the modern iterations. It had a whole lot of functionality, although I believe for Windows 11, they're going to be going back to building upon the Unix infrastructure like they did with XP, and that was where they had created the most stable versions. So with Windows 11, I believe they're going to go back to the Unix infrastructure, and will make it hopefully a more stable system. But with the regards to the command line interface, you might start to see a lot more similarities between Linux, Windows, and Mac, because right now you have Windows in one area where they have their own kind of command line interfaces, and then you have Linux and Mac on the other, and theirs is relatively different. So we're starting to see some merger in that aspect. So All right. Start button menu basically provides you a place to search, access programs, allows you to kind of use a hierarchical interface where you can kind of go down through files and find what you're looking for and things like that. Also allows you to shut down, restart, get to system tools, access all your libraries, control panels and apps and all that fun stuff all in one little place. So this is essentially what it looks like when you're clicking on it and allowing you to go through the files. When you get up into Windows 10, however, it looks a little more like this. So it has changed a little bit. The basic functions have remained relatively the same. Pinning and unpinning, as we talked about, applications and files that you want to use on a regular basis. You can go ahead and pin those down to your taskbar so that they will be readily available for you every time you open up your system. You don't have to go looking for them to bring them up. They are right there at just a single click. Used to be you could put application shortcuts on your background, but you can also pin them to the taskbar. I don't know if any of you guys have ever met anybody who just has like 500 shortcuts pinned to their background. They don't organize them in any shape or manner. They're just, the whole thing is just a whole bunch of different applications that they use from time to time. If you ever come across somebody like that and you want to have fun with them, you take a screenshot of that and then set that screenshot as the background, and then you take all those files and hide them in a folder. So the picture of all the icons are there. They can sit there and click on them all day and night, but they're just clicking on the picture of the background. So fun tip for anybody, you know, it kind of teaches them not to have all that stuff there, right there on their desktop. Pro tip, don't do it to your boss. They get mad.
That's why Marvin's not here today.
That's me. No, I like, true story. When I was first working in an office for a while there, we were going around playing IT pranks on each other for like weeks, and it was like low level stuff. You learn things like on the optical mouse, if you put clear masking tape over it, the laser can't pick up the desk. It can only focus on the tape itself. So like they'll sit there and move the mouse around and nothing happens, and they'll look at the mouse and they can't see the clear masking tape. You know, so little stuff like that. I thought I would be real clever, and I went over to my boss's computer and I changed his computer keyboard layout to a Dvorak layout, which is a complete different array of the way you lay out the keys. So like when you hit A, it's not A, it'll be like V or something like that. It completely rearranges the keys on the keyboard. And then to my surprise, instead of saying, hey, there's a problem, no, he restarts his computer. So now he can't log in because the computer settings are set and he can't access any of his systems. And it's my fault. So exactly. Who is that?
I think Kelly's son was just roasting him.
That is really funny how that chimed in. And that was my son's Spider-Man watch.
It was perfect timing.
I know. I was like, is that somebody like putting up a meme or something? And
Yeah,
I was like, wait
someone's
a
real
minute.
clever.
You know, take off my headphones and like, oh no, that's real life. It's my son's Spider-Man watch going off on the counter. That was hilarious. I'll have to tell him about that. Anyway, so pinning and unpinning to your taskbar is a real efficient way to maintain any programs that you may have used on a regular basis. Please don't be the person that has 500 icons on their background. All right, gadgets. All right, gadgets were introduced in Windows 7. And these are like mini programs that can be put on the desktop to, you know, clutter it further and allow you to personalize your PC just a little bit more. And they were things like your calendar or a clock or, you know, like notepads or something like that. You know, stocks, if you're going to follow that, just, you know, a bunch of little tiny programs that you could have quick and easy access to that you could pin to your desktop. And they call them gadgets. And that was introduced in Windows 7. All right. Stonks. Nice, Avery. All right. Next, Arrow, we talked about that. That was the see-through design on the applications here, so you can see through it instead of opposed to the solid bar. They're obviously very proud of it. So they brought that in as well in Windows 7, all versions except Starter. All right. Next, we have Taskbar and notification area. Taskbar, that line at the very bottom of the screen on Windows computers, it allows you to see all the open programs you have, as well as you can get notifications on them if things have changed. Like if you would have your instant messenger up, it would change, it would flash orange or something like that to let you know you have a new message. So it would give you these nice little notifications on top of that. Over here, this is your quick launch area. That was where you would pin the frequently used programs to your taskbar. If there's things on there you don't use, like Internet Explorer, if you're not an Internet Explorer or Edge person, you prefer things like Firefox, Mozilla, or Google Chrome, or what have you, you can unpin the Edge icon there and go ahead and put your preferred browser in there so that it's easier to access for you and it's not clogging up your desktop with something you don't use anyway. Notification area over on the right hand side, as we talked about earlier, we'll tell you about like internet access, date and time, if you're having any security threats, if you need to do updates, various things like that. That will be over here on the right hand side. Battery life, if you have a laptop, volume control, printer status, all that stuff will be set, be visible with little icons over in your notification area. All right, questions so far? All right. Next, Windows desktop personalization. You can use all different kinds of themes and color panels and codes and stuff like that just to make your desktop a little more personal to you. They used to have all kinds of fun ones. Like there was one that was like, you could have a nautical theme and they would have like a sextant, for Google Maps as opposed to having a map, or an abacus instead of a calculator, something along those lines just to make it a little bit more personal to you, but it allows a, pretty good variety of personalization. You could download skins from the internet, use different color patterns. For those who are visually impaired, they're not able to see certain spectrums of color. You can adjust those things on there so that you can better see the issues, or better see, what is being displayed on the screen if the color palette that's being used is one that's not in a spectrum that you can visibly interact with. I believe Diego told a story a long time ago about a worker that came in every day and it seemed like their monitor was busted because the color patterns were bad, and they would switch out their monitor rather than calling IT because they figured they could fix it. And hold on, I'm going to throw it even further in the house. Give me a second.
Too much responsibility. Too much power.
Don't break the watch. Don't break the watch. Don't break the watch. All right. So you can have greater personalization with Windows and kind of have it fit your needs. But like I was saying, so one of Diego's people that worked with Diego would, every time they would come in, the colors would be all messed up on their monitor, and they would just think it was the monitor was going bad. So they'd unplug the monitor, take it back to the back room, come back, plug in a new monitor, and they think they'd be okay. But what was happening was they were hot seating that desk, and the person who worked at night was colorblind, so they were changing the spectrum on the monitor in the settings so that they could visually see it. And so they had to basically just teach the guy who was replacing the monitors that, like, look, you just change your settings and you're good to go, and made it so that they could both operate at the same workstation. All right. Windows Explorer. It's icon over in your pinned area. Looks like a file, and this allows you to look through your files in a hierarchical structure. And allows for ease in searching through these libraries. And you can have things grouped by like file type. It could be like by, that's in the library under Windows Explorer that allows you to kind of look through things by file type. Like you can look through it by music, you can look through it by documents, you can look through it by books, you can look through it by pictures. And if you have all the stuff stored in a multitude of folders, by clicking on this single icon in your library, it allows you to pull all the pictures from the entire computer to a single location and allow you to search them rather than having to go dig through all the various files trying to find that one picture. And with Windows Explorer, once you find that file or that path, it allows you to map the path to that particular file. So, say like you would need to go to, like Avery's files, documents, work documents, ITSS, cohort 3, and then you get to, students' grades. So it allows you to actually map the path to get to that particular document rather than having to search for it every single time. Questions so far? I'm gonna have to actually work on the sensitivity of the mic. It's actually picking up the rain.
Do you want me to take over, Kelly?
Yeah, why not?
All right. So
I gotta go find a watch.
okay. All right, so file structures. Users are authenticated through a user account, which will then provide their computer settings called a user. Sorry, that was my dog. One sec. Sorry about that. My wife just got home and my dog decided to let everyone know. Okay, we should be good.
Did Avery go on break?
Sorry, my dog went crazy and then my wife
Always
needed
ready
to.
take over.
Yep. All right.
I'll stop share so that you can jump in if you want.
Yes. 1 second.
I seriously thought that was you, Avery, with the watch.
With the watch, yeah.
Yeah, I seriously thought that was you. I was like, man, he was real quick on the draw with that one.
Unfortunately not. All right, give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Awesome. Let's try this again. File structures. So users are authenticated through a user account, which will then provide their computer settings called a user profile. The set of files and directories in each user profile will be specific to the user, while system files will be the same from user profile to user profile. So some general file information for file naming. There are 2 parts to a file name. The main part, which identifies the contents of the file, and then the extension, and that identifies the file type. So file names have a maximum allowed characters of 255, including spaces. Special characters are not allowed, such as the /, Kelly. I think that's /. We're gonna go with / because it's leaning forward. Our little carrots. this asterisk, our pipeline, and then backslash, quotation marks, question marks, colon. So our file namings, that would be like, for my resume, I might have Avery resume 2021. And if I saved it as a document, it would be .docx, or I could save it as a PDF. So the first part is going to be what you name it as to help you remember what it is. And then everything behind the period is going to tell you what file type it is. So file extension, this is what tells the operating system what type of file it is. So that way the associated program will open it. It is the last characters following the period and a file name such as .docx, .exe, .zip, or .txt, or text. So that's how your computer knows to open up a PowerPoint in Microsoft PowerPoint and a Word, like a document, into Microsoft Word. And then pathways, this is what Kelly was explaining just a minute ago. This is where the file lives in the directory. So our example would be in the C drive, users, username, desktop, A+, PowerPoints, lesson T32.PowerPointX. So this is our file, and this is where it resides. All right, directories. Directories give a hierarchical view of folders and files specified on the different drives available for that system. It is a method to organize the files in a meaningful way and can be found in the Windows Explorer window. A folder that contains other files and folders located within a directory is a subdirectory. So over here we have our directory, so libraries, computer, network, and subdirectories within our computer directory would be local disk, GG, Raven, shared, and I can't read the last one. So directories are at the top, subdirectories are within our main directories. Any questions? Gonna take that silence as a no. All right, OneDrive. So Windows Explorers may also list OneDrive as if it is an external drive. OneDrive is a cloud-based storage feature proprietary to Microsoft, where users can store file more space on the. So you can connect it to a cloud drive, and if you put it within that directory, it'll be saved onto the drive. Right. So changing Explorer settings. The toolbar in Windows Explorer contains many options located in the Organize tab, including changing the layout and folder and search options. So you can see that within this section. So layout, you can decide how you want it to look, and then you can look into your folder and search options. The folder and search options has 3 tabs: General, View, and Search. So this is our folders options window, and those are the tabs that we can go into. In the General tab, this will allow you to change from double-clicking a file to open it to a single click, and changing the navigation pane and how browsing folders should appear. The View tab has advanced settings, specifically related files and folders and how they appear, including showing hidden folders or hidden files and folders. There's also an option to reset to the default settings. So if you mess things up to where you don't really know how to fix it, you can just reset to your default settings and then go back and customize as you need. And then finally, the search tab that gives specifics to how a user wants to search for a file or folder. Are there any questions, concerns? This is something you can easily do yourself. If you go into your Windows Explorer, you can try this out for yourself. So that way you get a better idea of what it looks like and where things are. And if you mess up too far, just hit the Restore Defaults button. Right, managing files and folders. So creating and changing file or folder attributes can be accomplished by right-clicking the file and choosing Properties from the dialog box. So once you hit Properties, it'll open up this window. So whatever the file is, Windows Properties. From the General tab under Properties, changes can be made to the file's name, which program opens the file, and attributes to make the file read-only or hidden. And this dialog box also shows the file's path in the directory, the size of the file, and when it was created, modified, and last accessed. So this is where you can go and change all that stuff. So if you want your PowerPoints to open up with PowerPoint, it'll automatically open with PowerPoint typically, but you can change it to open up with a third-party application if you wanted to. And you can also hide it, make it read-only. You can look at all the information about it. Lots of good information. All right, managing files and folders, part 2. The Security tab assigns permissions to specific groups or users and designates who has access to edit, modify, view, read, and write. Under the Details tab, more information related to the file with an option to remove personal information from the specified files. And then the Previous Versions tab is used when restoring has been enabled to recover a file in the event of accidental deletion. Temporary files can use system resources when they are not deleted regularly. They are written constantly to hold data for a short time, but can stay until deletion. Disk cleanup can be a useful tool here to remove. Any questions? I think we have a really good lab on disk cleanup. I don't know if it's soon, but you will get to it. And it does a good job of taking you through the properties. Right, the Windows support tools. So current versions of Windows only have these support tools available through downloading either from the installation disk or through Microsoft's website. A list of helpful tools to download include these: our Microsoft Application Compatibility Toolkit, our Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit, Windows 7 Upgrade Advisor, Windows Optimized Desktop Scenario Selection Tool. There's deployment tools, Windows Virtual PC, XP mode. You've got management tools, Microsoft Security Compliance Manager, Windows PowerShell, performance tools, Process Monitor, Process Explorer. You can go back to the slide if you want to check those out, but those are some different tools that we can use. All right, Virtual XP mode. So included with Windows 7 Professional, Enterprise, and Ultimate, as well as Windows 8, is the ability to run applications in Windows XP mode. So this is a virtual client which emulates a Windows XP Professional with Service Pack 3. And this requires that you download and install Windows Virtual PC to be able to use it. A minimum of 2 GB of RAM and a 15 GB hard drive space for each virtual Windows instance. So if you're running a virtual machine, you're going to need extra RAM and extra hard drive space to be able to do that, because you'll be running it on top of your current system. Any questions with that? Yes, Luis.
So, something related to that, with the XP mode.
Mhm.
When I used my laptop a long time ago, I used like Windows safety mode,
Okay.
and it looked like the Windows XP operating system.
Not the same.
Yeah. Safe mode is just bare bones. And Windows XP is going to have, there'll be more that you can do within it. Safe mode is usually used to like fix the desktop when it's kind of broken. You're not sure what's wrong. You can go in and like look at files without being connected to the network. All right. Windows Easy Transfer, or WET. This feature can be used to migrate a few accounts from Windows Vista to Windows 7 or Windows 7 to Windows 8 or 8.1. However, to migrate to Windows 10, you must use the User State Migration Tool, or the USMT. Both of these utilities transfer the accounts, folders, and files and settings of the user. So that way you're not just having to start fresh. You can bring over a lot of your files and accounts, but sometimes you will have to go in and upgrade applications and files to be able to be used on those newer operating systems. System Restore. System Restore appears in Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. It allows you to restore the system to a previous point in time. To create a restore point, you should access the System Protection tab of the System Properties dialog box. So this is really handy if you want to be able to create a restore point and then mess around, download a new operating system, download a new application, and if it messes up your system, you can just use the system restore to go back to that previous version. Everything will be good to go. Any questions? Cool. All right, so 32-bit versus a 64-bit operating system. So 32-bit and 64-bit is the determinant for the amount of data the processor, or CPU, can process effectively. To run a 64-bit version of the operating system, a 64-bit processor must be part of the system architecture, and in most cases, it can also run 32-bit versions. If the system architecture is 32-bit, it will not run 64-bit operating systems or application programs. Yes, Humberto.
Yes. What is the need for Windows to still be delivering operating systems in 32 bits?
I guess for people that have older systems to be able to use, to be able to run the operating system, it also has less requirements. So if you don't have a very, you know, the system requirements aren't as big of a deal nowadays. Like it's pretty easy to meet those requirements, but some people might not be able to meet it with their current computers. And so I imagine that's why you would still provide a 32-bit version, but in general, most computers can handle a 64-bit operating system. Right, good question. Another main difference between 32-bit and 64-bit is in how much memory it can recognize and use. 32-bit systems can only use up to 4 gigabytes of memory, and installing anything more will go unused and unrecognized. So the basic information about the computer is shown in the system applet in the control panel It shows what version of the operating system is installed, as well as the computer name, activation status, and system index rating. All right. Security Action Center. The Action Center is inside the control panel, or can also be accessed from the notification area by clicking on the flag in the system tray, as shown here. If you click that, let's see. I guess I don't have it. I might have taken that off, to be honest. The Action Center is there. This feature was first seen in Vista and was renamed in Windows 7. The Action Center is included in all current versions, and its main function is to inform or flag when there is a security or a maintenance issue. So that tells you something's up. Any questions? All right. Let's get through it. The Security Center. So rolled into the Action Center in Windows 7, the Security Center interface shows the status of and allows you to configure the firewall, Windows Update, virus protection, spyware, and unwanted software protection, internet security settings, UAC, which is user access control, and network access protection. So this is where you'll see your firewall and all those protective things. All right. The user account control, or the UAC, is intended to prevent unintentional or unauthorized changes to the computer by either prompting for permissions to or requiring the administrator password before continuing. Changes to this from Windows 7 allow you to better control how strict USC intercedes. So this is really handy, especially if you have multiple users using the same system. Like at my grandparents' house, they allow all the grandkids to use the computer, but some of them aren't as tech savvy as others and are prone to clicking on things they shouldn't and also attempting to download things they shouldn't. So by making use of the UAC, you can prevent certain users from being able to download things and mess up the system too bad. So really handy if you're a parent or if you're sharing the system.
Also, if you're setting up systems for other users like employees and stuff like that, you don't want them going in and turning off the security features and stuff like that because they can't access their Spotify or YouTube or what have you. You may have security measures in place like the firewall and all that stuff. You don't want them going in and turning that stuff off in the process. You're getting access to the control panel. So the UAC will allow you to set what they're allowed to manipulate and what they aren't.
Yep. And they will try to do that. Being a former employee that was not IT, I also tried to get around the system. And some IT are better at keeping users out than others. So be one of the better IT guys. All right. Windows Firewall. This is renamed to Windows Defender Firewall in Windows 10 and can be used to stop incoming and outgoing traffic. It was first implemented in Windows Vista and has been in all versions since. In the advanced settings, there are many rules, policies, and monitor settings available. So you can change what applications can go through or can be stopped. You can add applications. There's a lot you can do with it. But you typically don't want to mess around with it too much unless you know exactly what you're preventing or allowing. Mark, I'm kind of scared to find out what's on that link. Kelly, do you see it?
No, what did he put?
In the chat.
I don't see a link.
Well, it's not actually hyperlinked, but
Oh gosh.
it's a good joke, Mark. I appreciate it. All right, so continuing with Windows Defender, a free anti-malware program included in Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. It was originally an anti-spyware program, and in Windows 8, it was upgraded to include antivirus as well. Yes, sir, Mark.
Okay, Windows Defender, I
Mm-hmm.
used to get that mixed up with the Firewall for some reason. I don't know, I had a hard time trying to keep those two separate.
I believe they call it Windows Defender Firewall. It's an aspect of the security.
Yeah. I think
Okay.
it's all a part of it, the same thing.
Okay,
But in my opinion, one of the best anti-malware and antiviruses you can have is a simple ad blocker, because then you do not click on, bad links, and also it can prevent pop-ups. So that will stop a lot of problems before they even can appear. But you should also have a antivirus, anti-spyware running as well. All right, Event Viewer. This is comprehensive error and information log viewing feature. The Event Viewer can track events when logged into an administrator account. These log files can give a general indication of a Windows computer's health. So you can see errors, warnings, stuff. You can see when there are issues throughout your computer and when they happen. And there's a really good lab. Kelly, do you remember if it's in Coursera or Test Out? I think it's Coursera, where they go through Event Viewer.
I believe it's Coursera, yeah.
Yeah. There's a really good lab that'll give you lots of good practice with it. All right. Ready Boost. This feature is one we will ask about a lot throughout the course. So it'll be a good idea to understand what it is now. It is a feature available in Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. It allows you to use free space on a removable drive, so a USB, to speed up a system by caching content, and is used when you are running low on available memory. So it is essentially acting as extra RAM. It is a pretty decent short-term fix if you are short on RAM. In Windows 7, it can be used with a USB drive, flash memory, SD card, or compact flash. Up to 8 devices can employ Ready Boost in Windows 7, each needing a minimum of 256 megabytes of free space. Ready Boost is configured from the Ready Boost tab of the Properties dialog box for the removable media drive device. I don't have one plugged in, otherwise I would show you. But if you go to the properties of your USB drive, you can find Ready Boost, and you can dedicate the USB to Ready Boost. You can use it for the system, and you can reserve however much space you would like. The more space, the better. But yeah, that's Ready Boost. Any questions on that? Mark, is your hand still up from your last question? Okay. All right. Windows 8 and 8.1 specific features. So in 8.1, it made running the operating system without a touchscreen easier and brought back the start button. It was basically just a patch. So it made it more friendly for your desktop, your non-touchscreen usage. The Windows Store, since the GUI of Windows 8 is arranged through a series of apps, the Windows Store is where new apps can be purchased or are available for free. So that's where you would go to download apps. The multi-monitor taskbar. This addition seen in Windows 8 allows the taskbar to be visible when multiple monitors are being used. Previously, the taskbar would only be seen on the main monitor. So that is pretty handy. I use that a lot because I have 2 monitors. And so being able to access my taskbar from either one, it's just a nice quality of life sort of addition. We gained the Microsoft Live sign-in. This version of Windows requires a Microsoft Live login, which is a free account used to interact with MS. And its simplest function, it can synchronize the desktop and data between devices. The downfall of this is that it requires an internet connection to authenticate. Then we also gained the side-by-side app. So Windows 8.1 allows to run a Metro application and a desktop application at the same time, or up to 4 Metro apps at the same time. Any questions? All right, we're almost through it. Windows 10 specific features. We gained App Locker, and this allows for policies to be created in Group Policy to control the access of applications. We gained Branch Cache, and this is a Microsoft client server technology that allows for caching of commonly accessed files at branch office locations. And then we also gained Direct Access, which provides a method of automatic connection for a virtual private network, or VPN, between the client and main office. Very handy. Questions, concerns? Seeing lots of intrigued faces. Oh, and Lab Sim. So I guess that last one just takes you directly to a lab. And then our objectives revisited. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
That's what I was gonna say, is that, yeah, that links you directly to the labs connected, sends you to the first one for the ones connected to this technical session.
And we'll provide the Nearpod in Slack. So if you want to go through it and go straight to those labs while it's fresh in your mind, wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. So our objectives revisited. You should be able to describe the purpose and function of an operating system. You should be able to identify the main features of Microsoft operating systems. And finally, compare and contrast the features of Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. All right.